welcome to another edition of the Kilted Homesteader. Today we're going to talk about our N-Series tractors again, and today we're going to talk about draining the hydraulic oil and things to watch out for as a result of it and how to do it. Oftentimes guys will have problems. There's two different types of plugs underneath the tractor to drain the hydraulic oil. Actually, before I get into saying that, I should add that the transmission, the hydraulic chamber where the hydraulic pump is, and the rear differential all share what they call a common sump. In other words, if you put an oil in one system, it's going to end up in the other system too. They all share oil back and forth. There's holes that are inside the areas that allow things to flow back and forth through the different areas of the hydraulic and transmission area. So they share a common sump. I personally use a tractor hydraulic oil, not hydraulic oil, but a tractor hydraulic oil in my transmission. The reason for that is that's what's recommended by manufacturers. If you see it meets the same specs that New Holland wanted it to meet back in the late 30s and 40s and 50s when they designed their tractors. They didn't have tractor hydraulic back then, so oftentimes you'll see 90 weight oil or 90 weight gear oil, and that's what they used. Some guys will use an 80-90 weight gear oil in their transmission, but it's not a necessity, and it's a little bit thicker of an oil, so sometimes it can be problematic when it's really cold with your hydraulic system. Also, what I don't like about the 80-90 gear oil is the stinking sulfur smell. It stinks like rotten eggs, and it's never fun to work with. So I put tractor hydraulic in mine. I know lots of other guys use the same type of hydraulic oil, and this isn't to say 80-90 is bad or anything else. I'm just saying what I use and what works for me. So now that we know they share a common sump and a common area, there's 3 points that need to be drained on your hydraulic system if you're doing a total system drain on your hydraulics. The first plug you want to pull, I'll show you a picture of that location right now. So that's the first plug that you want to pull. There's three, like I said, there's three. That one there that you see is all the way towards the back end under the rear axle. And that's this plug right here, which is like a pipe fitting or a pipe type threads. It's a taper thread. So there's no need to really put sealant on this. If you want to put some Teflon tape on this, you can. Don't be excessive because you don't want it to end up in your hydraulic system. But this will seal itself because it's tapered as it threads in. As you can see, this has a square head on it. So you can use a few different things to get it out. The first thing and the best thing to do would be an 8-point socket, which looks like this. And it's designed to slip over top of a square head like that. In this case, it's a 9/16 8-point socket. Most of us have 6-point sockets and 12-point sockets, but again, this is an 8-point, so it's able to slip over that and hold it secure. The nicest thing about using that is you're grabbing it on 4 sides instead of just 2. The other option would be an adjustable wrench. Obviously, this is a really big wrench. You probably get a lot smaller adjustable wrench, and you can use that on it, and it would work. But again, that's a last resort, not a last resort, but that's if you don't have an 8-point socket, I would use that. One thing you'll notice when it comes to the plugs underneath the tractor, people put these things entirely too tight. My 8-point socket happens to be with a 1/2-inch drive ratchet. I do not tighten it up all the way out here with my 1/2-inch ratchet. When I tighten it up, I choke up on it, kind of like you choke up on a baseball bat, so you don't have as much leverage, and I tighten that way. You just want to snug it up. You don't have to reef on it. I don't know what the torque specs on it. You just want it snug. You don't need to be all the way out here, because I will tell you that if you tighten it up out this way with the heating and the cooling of the tractor, that metal is going to expand and contract around those threads, even on a minute level, and that it may be one tightness to get it in, but it'll be a whole different tightness getting it out. And you don't want that bolt or that pipe fitting to round off. You'll have nothing but problems with that. So that's the first one you want to pull out. And the reason why that's the first one you want to pull out, there's a 5-gallon capacity on this system. And many times there's some funny videos on YouTube with guys that drain these systems that didn't have a 5-gallon pail underneath, and they pull that one of the big plugs out, and it just fills to overflowing. And I felt bad for that guy when I saw him getting ready to do it. I don't even remember the video, but it's on there on YouTube. I felt really bad for him, and I knew it was going to happen the second he pulled that big plug. So I recommend you go and pull that small plug in the back in that picture. That way you have more control of the flow, and if something goes wrong, it fills up your pan too much, you can quick put that in. what I do is I have I think like a 4-gallon pan that I think my pan holds. I'll pull that plug first and let that fill up. When nothing else runs out of that, I'll put that plug back in. Then I'll empty my drain pan out. So then I have another 4 gallons. It's not going to have another 4 gallons, but I could put 4 more gallons in it. Then I go forward to the next one. The next 2 plugs are the same, and they look like this underneath your tractor. I'm not going to show you a picture of those because when you see them, you'll know them. There's actually 3 of these, one under the hydraulic, one under the transmission. And when I say hydraulic, it actually goes into the bottom of the hydraulic pump, one in the transmission, and you'll see the third one that looks like this all the way up underneath the engine of the transmission, or excuse me, the engine of the tractor. And that takes a different, I think that's a different size plug. Like it's big, but it might not be that big. I can't remember off the top of my head, but anyway, there's 3. This video isn't about that, it's about the transmission. So, again, a couple different ways to take this off. The best way, my recommendation, if at all possible, would be to use a 6-point socket. The reason why I say 6-point, again, people tend to put these on entirely too tight, and a 6-point socket will grab these threads a lot better than a 12-point socket. Now, unfortunately, this is what I have as a 12-point socket. It's this one here, the original, is 1 1/16 socket head is what's needed on that. So I use a 12-point on there. It's what I have. I didn't have a 6-point. Fortunately, the person that put it on before me had it tight, but it wasn't unreasonable. Now, you can use that to get it off. Now, I've seen some guys, because people put them on there entirely too tight, and I'll tell you why they put them on too tight in a little bit. They'll have to go to an adjustable wrench and use some leverage on it. I've even seen pictures of guys that have actually sheared this off, and you're left nothing but the threads inside of your transmission, and that's a whole nother ballgame to get those threads, to get the rest of the I guess you say cap or nut out. It's a whole big thing. What I think the reason why people are over tightening these is because they're not sealing these systems up right. I've taken these off before and seen Teflon tape wrapped around there. That's not going to seal it properly. Teflon tape is not a good thing to use in a situation like that. I've seen people put RTV sealant on here trying to get it to stop. Can it work? Yeah. Is it the best thing? Absolutely not. That RTV, that Teflon, if it gets into the engine, it could get into your hydraulic pump and cause all sorts of love, hate, and discontent. And we don't want that. The best thing to use is this here, and it's a gasket. They're not that expensive. You can find them on Amazon, just about anywhere. And it goes right over top of that, and that gives you the best seal. These threads won't seal properly, but this press fit, when it threads up against, will be more than enough to seal it off. The reason why I think guys over tighten these, one, there's some guys that just like to tighten the crap out of everything just to piss off the next guy. Sometimes. But a lot of times I think it's because guys can't get it to stop dripping and leaking. And so they keep figuring, I just got to tighten it a little bit tighter, it'll stop leaking. It will not if you don't have the proper seal. So you can often reuse these seals if they're not too old, but my recommendation to you is they're not that expensive. You take it off, you break the seal, put another one on, especially if it looks any kind of shady. This one here, I could probably reuse, but in a minute, I'm going to show you why I'm not reusing this one. So again, this can come off with a 6-point or 12-point socket. This is 1 1/16 on this one, if it's original. Or a certain aftermarkets will have that size too, and we'll talk about that in a second. Next case scenario would be an adjustable wrench. There again, make sure that sucker's on there nice and snug because you don't want to round those off or snap them off. Last resort could be a pipe wrench. Again, to me, that's a last resort, and you have to hook on there with a pipe wrench to get it off. Again, my recommendation, socket first, adjustable wrench next, pipe wrench, and you may have to put a floor jack up underneath to kind of keep pressure on the pipe wrench to keep it from slipping off on you. That might be something to do. Fortunately, I've never had to do that, knock on wood. Hopefully it never happens to me, but I know other guys have had that problem, have had to deal with it. Again, these are all standard threads, which means lefty loosey, righty tighty. So counterclockwise to take it off, or clockwise to put on. There again, when you're putting this on here, I put it on there. I use my 1/2-inch drive ratchet because that's what I have for this socket. I'm choking up on it. I'm not coming all the way back here for all that maximum leverage. You don't need to be tight, especially if you have the right seal on here. So one of the things with these hydraulic system, guys say, hey, where's the filter? Well, I want to change the filter. How do I change the filter? Well, I guess in the 1930s and 1940s and even into the 50s, when they designed these tractors, I guess the filters wasn't the thing that they really thought of. Guys just changed the oil out and hopefully let the dirt come out. Anybody that's opened up the inside of these cases See all the sludge and the gunk in the bottom there, and you just got to scoop it out by hand. That's how I clean mine out. Some of the parts I was able to use a parts washer on, but it just builds up years and years because they didn't have filters. They didn't use they had filters, but they didn't use them back then. One of the downsides with any kind of an engine, hydraulic system, or anything like that is if there's not a filter to grab it, over time, the metal breaks down and wear, and it creates those metal filings or metal, even minute things, are going to act like sandpaper throughout the system. And that's going to wear away at things, and there's not a filter there to grab it and pull it out of the oil. So it's just going to keep circulating around and acting like a valve grinding compound or sandpaper in there and just kind of wearing away at your gears. So Dennis Carpenter has this here. This is very similar to the other one. One of the main differences is this is a 1-inch head instead of 1 1/16 inch. So I'm able to use my 6-point socket in order to, tighten and loosen it. So it's not 1 1/16 inch. This one's a 1-inch. Now they send it with a new gasket. And here's the reason I got this. This in here is a magnet. And I'm replacing the one under the transmission and the one under the hydraulic pump. They don't offer one that I do for the pipe fitting in the back. But this magnet here, granted it's not a filter, but I'm hoping, and I'm sure it will, anybody that's changed engines and seen a magnetic plug before knows that it will grab metal filings and stuff like that and keep it from getting it throughout your system and maybe slow the wear down process down a little bit more. So I'm choosing to put this in. Again, I got this through Dennis Carpenter. There may be other outlets out there that have it. I did look at Just 8 Ends. They didn't have it, so I found it through them. Now you can see I had a little oil in there I was test fitting, make sure everything worked good. That magnet moves around in there, but it's anchored down by that little pin. It seems to be doing real well, and I'm really looking forward to it. And you can actually see the difference here. This doesn't have it in it, but this one does. So that's why I went to this. Do you have to? No. This is me just a little extra insurance, because things do sometimes come out of the system, and you want to make sure that you try to keep the contaminants out as much as possible. And of course, like I said, they sent it with a new gasket. I probably would have reused this old one if I had to, but because they sent me a new gasket, I'm going to use that new gasket. So that is my tip and trick for you, is maybe look at getting a magnetic plug when you go to change your hydraulic oil. So I hope you found this video very helpful. I hope you found it informative. Again, I'm not here to get into debates on 80/90 oil versus tractor hydraulic oil. A lot of it comes down to personal preference. Both work well. I find the tractor hydraulic works best for me. I'm in Pennsylvania. We have really cold winters, warm summers, and I think it seems to do the best fluid-wise. Plus, I have all my leaks in my hydraulic system fixed up good, so it doesn't leak really easy. So that's all that I have for this episode. I hope you found this very informative. If you did, I encourage you to give it a thumbs up. If you want to be notified, hit the notification button. And I also want to encourage you to subscribe to this channel for other videos like this. Thank you very much, and have a good day.